Okay. Well, this is Thanksgiving week, so I'm going to talk about Thanksgiving. I wanted to start with our thinking. Why is grumbling so universal? It seems like it keeps growing. The grumbling attitude, the grumbling spirit. It's almost, I heard a thing this morning about how Thanksgiving is one of the toughest times of the year because when families get together, they start arguing. They do all kinds of things. I mean, one of the things I heard, I couldn't believe, but I do believe it. But they said that, what they do, families, they divvy it up. They say, okay, you're going to bring the dessert, you're going to bring the main dish, you're going to bring the rolls, they divvy it up. And if somebody can't bring something, they charge them. So you got this old grandma coming to Thanksgiving that has to pay to come to the Thanksgiving with the rest of her family. This is interesting. You wonder, is this in our DNA, that we grumble? And it's interesting. You go back all the way to Adam. When God said, Adam, did you sin? Did you eat the fruit that I told you not to eat? And this is his answer. Oh, the woman that you gave me. You notice, right? I mean, he's not willing to stand for his own guilt, so he throws his wife under the bus. And if that wasn't enough, then he says, God, it's your fault. Now, this is an interesting phenomenon that happens. We're always trying to look better, right? We don't want to face our failures or our faults or our weaknesses. We don't like to face those. So we have an excuse. And this is one of the things that's interesting to me. You'll notice that proud people have a difficult time with Thanksgiving. Let me start. I'm going with Romans chapter 1. Let me start here. Let me see, verse 22, verse 21. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools. This is fascinating to me. I mean, you see this happening. I mean, if you watch some of those, whatever you call them, discovery programs, and every time they come to something that the scientists can't explain, they say, well, it took a couple extra thousand years. Strange. The scientists are becoming foolish. They profess to be wise, right? They claim to be wise, but they become very foolish. And this is what it's saying. Why? Because they refuse to give God honor. This is what I'm saying. Proud people have a hard time. Humble people don't have a difficult time. Why is that? Well, only one supreme can sit on the throne. If we're going to be the supreme, then we can't have God on the throne. We have to dethrone him so that we can sit there. So we're not going to glorify him. We're not going to honor him. We're not going to praise him. We're not going to worship him. We've got to take him off the throne so we can sit there. Because we have a contest going on. Who is going to be the most honorable? Is it going to be God or is it going to be me? And, this is what we saw Adam doing, right? Adam dethroned God so that he wouldn't look so bad. This is an interesting, I don't know what to call it, interesting phenomenon. And so basically, if we are going to be thankful, if we're going to honor God, if we're going to make him the supreme one, then we have to get off the throne. That's humility. Make sense? Most of us understand that prideful people are not very willing to worship God. And most of us understand that grumblers, you don't find happy grumblers. Right? I wanted to say this because it takes work to learn how to see the glory and the works of God. What this says is that they refused. It was obvious, right? That's what it says. It was obvious. Although they knew God, they neither glorified him nor gave him thanks, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. Now, I want to say something. We have to learn, this is a part of the process, we have to learn to see God in the creation. If we don't learn to see God, now I just wanted to kind of give you an example. When my boys and I went down to Peru, we were going through the Amazon jungle. And we're walking along and our guide says, "Oh, watch out." And there on the path, I would have stepped on it, was a snake. But it was so well blended with the surroundings, you couldn't see it. But she saw it. Our guide, she saw it. Another time she said, "Oh, there's a jaguar around here." She says, "Watch for the jaguar." And we're going, "What?" She says, "Oh yeah, can you smell it?" She could smell. Now, I don't know how far away he was, but she was accustomed. She learned to recognize the signs, right? And you wonder, why do people not see the signs of God? They're all around us. They're in the creation. One of my sons was showing us a couple weeks ago, showing us pictures that he took when he went to the mainland. And he went through a part of the desert, and this part of the desert was so beautiful. It just was, we were just in awe of the different formations and the way that the trees and everything had grown around these formations. This was all in the desert. And we're just going, wow, that is so awesome. Obviously, God created that. Now, it didn't take a whole lot for us to figure it out, but you know what? There are millions of people who don't see God in the creation. And you wonder, well, how does someone learn to see God? Right? You can learn to see God. I mean, that's part of, if you grow up in the jungle, you learn to see the things in the jungle, the snakes and the jaguars and all of those animals. There was one, oh dear, I can't even remember what it was called now, but it was basically a huge rat. It stood about this tall. I mean, its back, with all 4 feet on the ground, it stood about this tall. Huge. It's a rodent. But, we were on the river, so, we weren't in any danger. So the guy pulls the boat, over close so that we can see this thing, and he's just eating away. He's not paying any attention to us. But I thought, if somebody hadn't pointed that out, we never would have seen it. But you learn, you accumulate the senses to recognize. And this is what this is saying in Romans. If we don't have a heart to know or to see or to reverence or to love or to appreciate God, we won't even see Him. We won't recognize what He's done. Now, I think that in one sense, I think that's foolish. How many of you have ever, this is one of the things that they say, but you see this beautiful car, shiny, you hear the engine, and you look at that and you go, wow, that's interesting that just happened. What do you mean just happened? Well, just, it sprung up. What do you mean sprung up? Somebody created that car, right? It doesn't take a whole lot to figure that out. But there's some people that can't see it. They don't recognize in the stars, in the way that the planets are all situated exactly right. The fact that we are in exactly the right place on Earth to where we can have an atmosphere, we can have exactly the right temperatures. It's awesome. And it's obvious that it's God, right? Why do we recognize it? Because we have a heart to recognize it. We want to see it. And I just want to say this. I was talking about the grumbler. You understand that the grumbler, the reason he's grumbling is because the world is not the way he would like it. He's got a certain expectation, and the world is not like his expectation. And so he's grumbling about it. And I've said this before. What right do we have to cross-examine God? God, I don't like the way that you set this all up. That's silliness. That's foolishness. And most of us understand. We don't like complainy friends. Friends that are always complaining. Friends that are always upset. Friends or family who only see the things that are wrong. We don't like to be around them. Even at Thanksgiving, if they're going to come to the table and they're going to grumble about everything that we are eating, it's more fun not to have them there.
That's right.
So we don't like those kind of people, and we don't want to be those kind of people, right?
That's right.
We want to be thankful people. Grumblers, they're always frustrated. They're never happy. Turn with me to Jude. Can you find Jude? It's just before the last book in the Bible. And there's only one chapter, so if you turn too fast, you might miss it. Let me just read this. This is fascinating to me. Verse 11. Woe to them! They have taken the way of Cain. They have rushed for profit into Balaam's error. They have been destroyed in Korah's rebellion. Now, we're going to go back and talk about those in just a minute, but this is what it says. These men are blemishes at your love feast. Now, it's not talking about the real Cain or the real Balaam or the real Korah. It's talking about people who have followed the pattern of these guys, right? Mm-hmm. How many of you remember Cain? What was Cain's error? And this is very prevalent today. Cain's error. That's comparing himself with his brother. Well, God, how come he's blessed and I'm not blessed? Do you ever hear anybody say that? I hate those rich people, that 1%, I joined the, what is that called? Wall Street Rebellion or whatever. Why? Because I wish I were born rich, or I wish I came into lots of money. I discovered an oil well on my property. I wish, This is Cain. Cain was upset because his brother was blessed and he wasn't. Comparisons are dangerous. In fact, let me just say this. One of the dangers, what is the day after Thanksgiving? What does that mean? That's when all the sales, the one-day sales come out, right? You've got to get to Walmart on that one day in order to get the sales, right? This deal, this thing that's in us, I want to be blessed. And I want to be blessed for as little money as I can. So, I need to find the sales. That's important. You recognize how much our lives are controlled. And I just want to say this, if we are thankful, how many of us are thankful? We don't need one more thing.
That's right.
Really?
That's true.
It's hard for me to imagine. We, during this Christmas season, we're looking for all the things that we don't have that we wish we had. We're going through the catalogs. I was happy with the clothes that I had. Why am I going through the catalog? Trying to find something that I didn't have, that I would like to have. That's strangeness. What are we trying to do? We're trying to build our lust quotient. I want to know what I want. I don't know what I want, but I'm going to go find what I don't have and I want. This is strangeness. Or, what does he say here? Or Balaam. I don't know how many of you remember about Balaam. Balaam was a prophet. He was used by God. And one of the kings said, I need you to come. I want you to curse this nation that's coming up, because they're dangerous. So Balaam goes out there, and when he gets ready to curse this nation that's wandering out in the desert, God says, don't you dare. Oh, wow, okay. So he tells the king, I can't curse him, because God said don't curse him. The king said, what? What kind of a deal is this? I mean, can't you just conjure up something, mix a couple chemicals together, or leaves, or animal leftovers or whatever, can't you just... And he goes, no, no, no. The only power I have is the power that God gives me. And so, the king says, okay, well, you're not going to get paid. Balaam says, well, I can't do it. If God won't do it, I can't do it. So he goes home. Later on, the king says, come back. I'll double your wages if you'll curse this nation. So Balaam goes out there. Now, I can't tell you the whole story. It's an interesting story. You can read it. It's all in the Bible. But he goes out there to curse the nation. And God said, don't you dare. He tells the king, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And the king says something very interesting to Balaam. He says, I wanted to bless you, but your God has kept you from being blessed. I could have given you a whole room full of gold. I wanted to bless you, but your God has kept you from being blessed. Do you ever hear anybody with that kind of philosophy? If you wouldn't mind just compromising your faith a little bit. You don't have to compromise in a big thing. You don't have to kill anybody. But just compromise your faith by a few lies or a little bit of cheating. Or just, you only compromise a little. And you can be blessed. You ever hear that? I want a bigger car. I want a nicer house. How do I get it? I want to live on Maui. How do I make that happen? I honestly, this has been quite a few years now, but this couple showed up in church on Sunday morning. They were new. I hadn't met them. So I went over and introduced myself. And I said, oh, who are you? What are you doing here? Oh, we just moved. So, and listen, this is the story. I'm not exaggerating this. This is the story. The guy talked this lady, beautiful lady, he talked her into moving to Maui with him, and they were going to live together. And he was going to buy this beautiful house. In fact, I think he did buy a beautiful house. He was quite wealthy. And so I'm talking to her, and she's been at church, she's been on the worship team, she's been, really serving God. But she compromised so that she could live on Maui. She says, yeah, I'll live with you, because you're going to take me to Maui. I'm going, whoa! I tried to talk her out of it, but I couldn't. But you understand what's happening here. Cain compared himself with his brother and felt like he wanted something better. So he violated God, sinned, in order to have more. Balaam, his error was, he felt like God was keeping him back. God has all these standards. You're not supposed to lie, you're not supposed to cheat, you're not supposed to steal. All of these kind of things. And how many of you know most of the world doesn't live by those standards? And so they have more. And they boast about it. Well, if you weren't a Christian, if you wouldn't mind, you could work for our company. And, yeah, it's not quite legitimate, but it's almost legitimate. Oh, that's Balaam's error. He says, woe to them that have taken the way of Cain, have rushed for profit into Balaam's error. They have been destroyed in Korah's rebellion. How will you understand? None of us. I mean, this is a part of who we are as human beings. We don't like to be told what to do. Right? And I keep saying this, but I think it's important for us to realize God is trying to prepare us for heaven. How many of you understand that in heaven there are no committees, there is no voting, God is the absolute rule. Whatever God says. You understand that? And so he's trying to get us ready for heaven. And so he says, trust me. Yeah, but God, I could do better if I didn't have to keep all of your rules. And he says, trust me. It's going to go better if you do it my way. And do you guys understand what I'm saying? So there is compromise happening all around us. People, friends, family, all around us it's happening. And it's hard for us sometimes. You remember the story. I hope I don't take too long telling all my stories, but you remember the story of Saul? When Saul, he was the first king of Israel. God selected him to be the first king of Israel. And Saul, it says in his first couple battles out against the Philistines and against all those enemies, in the first few battles, Saul won tremendous victories. So what happened? The Philistines said, oh man, we can't defeat Saul the way it is, so let's get a bigger army and more horses and more chariots. And so they did. And so they sent a notice to Saul, we will meet you in a certain place, our army against your army. So, Saul is thinking, well, so far I've done pretty well. And so he gets his army, sends them out here to this place, and he made an arrangement with Samuel. Samuel was the high priest. He made an arrangement with Samuel to come out and offer a sacrifice, because he was sure if we did a sacrifice, then we're going to win. Well, what happens is his army is all out there, and they're all kind of chomping at the bit, but they watch the Philistine army just growing and growing and growing and bringing out worse weapons. And they're watching this. And so the Israeli army, Saul's army, you notice that some of them are just kind of backing away, getting out. And so Saul is watching this. He's going, man, if Samuel doesn't get here pretty quick, I'm not going to have an army to fight with. And so he decides, okay, if Samuel's not going to be here to do it, then I'll do it myself. Now, you know that the offering of sacrifices, that kind of thing, is supposed to be done by the priest, not by the king. But Samuel goes out there, does the offering, and just when he's all done, because Saul's ready to get his army going. We got to go fight those Philistines. And when he's done with the offering, Samuel walks up. And Samuel says, what are you doing? He's going, well, you didn't show up on time. We had an appointed time and you didn't show up. How many of you know prophets sometimes are late? Oh, dear. So what happens? Samuel tells Saul, listen, things are not going to go well with you if you're not obedient to God. And it isn't how big your army is that determines whether you win or lose. How many of you understand that?
That's right.
It isn't how much money you have in the bank, whether you're going to be happy or not. It isn't whether you have a nice car. It isn't whether you have a nice house. It isn't whether you have a great job. That's not what's going to determine whether you're going to be happy or not. So this is a powerful lesson. And we all know that this is true. So, this is the way God tests us. How many of you have ever been tested? You think, if I could just do this, then I would be happy. This handsome of all handsomes is wanting to date me. And the pastor keeps telling me, don't be unequally yoked. I know he's not a Christian, but he probably will become a Christian. Oh dear. Most of us recognize that's a trap, right? It's a trap. This is what God says. I will bless you. I will bless you. Oh, come on. Okay, Philippians. Let's go to Philippians. Most of you can find Philippians. Ephesians, Philippians, right? Philippians chapter 2. I'm going to start with verse 13. For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. Do everything without complaining or arguing. This makes sense? We know this is what will happen. Somebody begins an argument with us, and we have to make sure that they understand that they're wrong about us. Most of you don't even understand what I'm talking about. Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault, in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe. What is he saying? This is God's plan. God's plan is that we stand out. Do you understand that? How are we going to stand out? By being blameless, by not arguing, right? Isn't that what he's saying? You guys better read this, because you want to make sure I'm on track here. This is interesting. He says, I want you to stand out. I want people to look at you the way they look at the stars. They go, oh, it's so beautiful. Now, what is he saying? He's saying to us, don't be like the rest of this dark world. This dark world, everybody argues, everybody complains, people are unhappy. People always wish they had more than what they have. Don't you be like that. I was thinking, can you imagine what would have happened in the Philippian jail? Do you remember what that was all about, the Philippian jail? When Paul and Silas were put in jail in the stocks. And this is not what really happened. This is my imagination. But can you imagine what would have happened if Silas, after they've been beaten, they're really hurting, they're hungry, they're bent over the way that they do those stocks, so it's very uncomfortable. And Silas turns to Paul and says, "You've always got to be the big shot." Why did you cast that demon out of that girl? You could have just left her the way she was and everything would have been fine. But no, you got to go act out like you're the big guy and cast out the demon. Now here we are. This is all your fault, Paul. Can you imagine? Like I say, that's not what happened. It's hard for us. We want to blame somebody. We want to find fault. We want to accuse. We like to grumble. So it's a learning experience for us to learn not to grumble. Right? How many of you want to learn how not to grumble? Okay. And he says specifically here, this generation is a dark generation. And we know that. I want to tell a little story. This happened many years ago. There was a very powerful evangelist. This was in England. He was a very powerful evangelist, and hundreds, thousands of people were coming to Christ. It was a huge thing that was happening. And one day he's walking down the street, and this little girl tugs on his coat. And, he doesn't know what this is all about, so he says, "Oh, nice little girl," and he talks to her for a few minutes, but she doesn't say too much. And she keeps pulling on his coat. He says, "Do you want something?" She said, "Yes. I wanted to tell you thank you." And he's going, "Oh, wow, what did I do? That's nice." She says, "And I've got a gift for you." And she hands him all these sticky candies that she's had in her hand, Not too appetizing, but she says, "I want you to have these." And he understands that, for a little girl like that, that's a valuable gift that she's trying to give to him. And so he kneels down so he can talk to her. And he says, "What are you so thankful for?" She said, "Our home has been so sad. It's been so hard. My daddy comes home every night drunk, and he beats up my mom, and he treats us kids like we're dirt." She says, "Our home has been very, very, it hasn't been a good home." And she said, "Last week, my daddy went to your service, and he came home so changed that we're all talking about our new daddy. Our new daddy doesn't go out and drink like he used to. Now he comes home and he plays with us and he talks with us. And it's wonderful. Our new daddy is so wonderful. And it's all because he went to your meeting." And so the evangelist says, "Oh, thank you." By this time, the evangelist is crying. And he says, "Oh, thank you." Why do I tell that story? It is important for us to learn to be thankful for the things that God does. And sometimes our gifts to God are not great gifts, but we give him what we have. We show our love to him for what he has done. I wanted to close by having us all read Psalm 95. So if you can find Psalm 95. You got it? Oh, good. We got it up on the screen. That's neat. So we can say it all together. We won't, our different versions of the Bible won't confuse us. Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song. For the Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods. In his hand are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Come, let us bow down in worship. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart as you did at Meribah, as you did in that day at Massah in the desert, where your fathers tested and tried me, though they had seen what I did. For 40 years I was angry with that generation. I said, they are a people whose hearts go astray. They have not known my ways. So I declared on oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. A psalm, a song of thanks to the Lord, recognizing him in his awesomeness, recognizing him in his glory. I still have things to say, but I'm going to stop there. I do want for us to understand we can trust him. We can trust God. There are so many things, you know. I mean, he is always planning. He is always strategizing. He is always working things out for his glory. How many of you recognize that? So when things happen in your life that are not like you would like for them to be, you're not going to complain, right?
Yeah.
You are going to understand that the reason that those things are happening, God hasn't gone away. God hasn't quit loving you. God has not taken a vacation. He is preparing you for the next step. Most of us know that story of Joseph, son of Jacob. How he went, you know, all through all of those things. He went through being beaten, went through, you know, his first job, lost it, went to jail, was in jail for years, thinking he was going to get out. Thinking, you know, God hasn't left me. God is still on the throne. And so he was still trusting God. When he finally got out, and the king, the Pharaoh, said, you know what? You're just the person we need. I want you to be the assistant king. He's going, whoa, how did I get that position? One way he got that position. He trusted God. And we know that if things don't go our way, things don't go the way we want them to go, it's because God has a plan. Right?
Amen. Amen.
Keep trusting God because he's working something out for his glory.
That's right.
And we're going to be promoted by it. Right?
His glory. Amen.
Let's pray.